Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Nonprofit podcast, where we're creating a platform to allow executive director to mastermind among each other. Today, I have Krystal Valencia, CEO and founder of Rental Rescue here. Rental Rescue is an organization that focuses on affordable housing. So, welcome, Krystal. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Cherry. Thank you so much for having me. I am Krystal Valencia. So I started Rental Rescue out of a hobby during COVID, actually, and it became
Oh,
my evenings and weekends, which is really is, you know, financial modeling and trying to understand capital being a hobby turned kind of passion project is an unfamiliar way of going about. I think founding a nonprofit, but it's definitely been a ride since then. I've been doing a lot of things over the last little bit related to rental rescue, including, and just for kind of context around what we are first, think of like a dog and cat rescue where you have
mm.
animal rescue, but instead of doing it for animals, it's for multifamily rental buildings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Crazy analogy there, but
It's
very,
it works though, right? People
yes,
get
totally understand now.
yeah.
And well, when we first started talking, earlier, I noticed how young you are to create this particular nonprofit organizations and focus on one of the biggest issue that's faced by the whole country for the last, I would say, 10, 15 years. It is pretty inspiration for someone as young as you to focus on something that is such a big problem that the government for the last 8 years at least before Mark Carney comes on was not able to attack.
Thank you so much. And I think that at the end of the day, the reason why youth and more 30 something year olds should be getting involved in affordable housing and why it's such a passion project for many of us is because at the end of the day, the decisions that we make today uh, end up like we're our generation is the one who ends up with the consequences.
Yeah,
And real estate in particular and housing in particular, housing security is a means for intergenerational security and accumulating wealth. And that's known to be a thing. That's known to be a common understanding, at least. And with this kind of next generation of leaders and succession planning in this way, I think it's really important that we're also that we are a part of the decision making process in creating the future that we want to see.
that's fantastic. I mean, you have quite an impressive resume. You were recognized as one of Canada's 2022 Young Impact Leaders by Future of Good, and is also the 2025 Young Changemaker Award winner from the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association. And you also were previously holding the certification of Certified Fundraising Executive from 2020 to 2023. And then you also serve as a delegate to the United Nations Commissions on the Status of Women from 2018 to 2023. So you held many titles. You're very accomplished young leaders in the nonprofit space. And I guess the biggest questions that I have is, hey, like your background is very diverse. CFRE is a great designation, and you stop having that designation, and now you're focusing on building that capital stack and building that financial modeling to enable also other nonprofit organizations that they focus on affordable housing to rescue all these rental buildings. Like, what made that switch? What made you make that switch? And how did you even acquire those? I mean, they are very different set of skill sets.
Thank you. Well, I would say that the titles, as important as titles are, I think that I don't necessarily um, agree with um, I guess the space where it's hard for a lot of people to have the opportunities to do that, and and be connected to the people that that have enabled me to go to, like, the Zonta International Women and Leadership are the reason why I was a part of the UN delegate, a CSW UN delegate delegation. And for ONFA, I've been very lucky to have people in the for-profit and nonprofit spaces who believe and understand the work that I'm doing, and it to be as important as it is. And I think that, like, a lot of people, I talk about this sometimes around borrowed belief. I borrow belief from people who believe in me even when I don't believe in
Hmm.
myself, so that I'm able to kind of go out there and talk about these things. And I think from the technical standpoint, another piece of it is surrounding myself around people who, if I don't know the answer, being able to ask questions, and know that I don't know everything and I will never know everything. And there's a lot of the work that I still don't know, and
Hmm.
being surrounding myself around people who I can lean on to ask advice from, and learn about what they're doing and what works and what doesn't, and similarly reciprocate the skill sets that I do have and the relationships and connections that I'm able to make among people and among capital and among the kind of places that I kind of that I frequent, so that we can enable a better collective kind of structure around the work too.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think
Now,
that is deep in that. Yeah, the people.
yeah, like for sure, the you leaning on the people surrounding you, and but it still requires your drive. You've raised over $30 million. What? How did you get there? How did you even start? How did you get to the $30 million? And Rent a Rescue, um, how did you raise the funds to do all these rescuing?
So, I mean, as I mentioned before, I think that the being able to capital raise was also, and $30 million is accumulated over several years of building relationships with philanthropists, and specifically for rental rescue, the initial investment that we received was from First Ontario Credit Union, and
Oh.
it was very much like a I believe in you guys doing this. Let's prototype, and here are the parameters that we wanted to create around the work, so that we can collectively understand what it is that we need to do and how we can do it together. And I think that, like, raising capital is one thing, but I think learning about my relationship to money and how that shows up in my day to day, not coming from wealth, and not coming from an immigrant family, and financial literacy is not something that we're generally taught, and so that I was generally taught, and so trying to relearn, and kind of apply that to how I show up in my day to day, and how I want to create an environment that will enable that, not just for our tenants, but also for the people that are involved with us as partners and as affiliates. That's kind of where I'm trying to work towards. But capital raising is a lot of it is relationships, and is, you know, delivering on what you say you're going to do, and doing it to the best of your ability. And I'm a big proponent of ensuring that if I can or can't do something, I will be very direct around, I can't do that right now, and here's why, and that it's okay. But I think that my capital raising experience has really leaned on kind of learning about who I am, how I show up, what values I want to practice, and if there's alignment in that with the capital that I've been able to raise and work with. And if there isn't,
So,
then that's okay. It's a matter of understanding how that shows up in both on both ends.
so I'm curious. You mentioned that a credit union is your very first capital partner. And how did you even approach this topic with them, if that's allowed to be shared?
So I approached the credit union, um, basically understanding that this is, like, they understand that this is a struggle in Hamilton, but also everywhere. And we're
Hmm.
seeing
Yeah.
this. perpetuate. And so um, just really connecting around here's what the need is, but not from a nonprofit lens. Here's how the capital flows, and here's why it's here. Then really going into the like nitty gritty and in application and execution, and that planning I think also created more of a foundation or understanding around the work too. Um, yeah, but I think that like again, millions of dollars. Everyone only people only really see the outcomes over 2 days. They don't see the several years of work that
Yeah,
comes that came about before that, right?
yeah. But you also mentioned earlier, I want to dig a little bit deeper because I think it's very valuable, even for myself as I think I'm called a first generation immigrant because I'm here. I was not born here. Now, we were raised having different type of values and always believing in going to school and then getting a good job and then all these things that come through. And I'm sure it's not just Asian. I think Eastern European they have the same value. I think there's actually around the world. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. You mentioned that you learning to detach yourself from your older belief and then really embracing the new value that you've learned over what kind of older value or traditional value that we carry or you've carry and then you recognize you have to overcome it to make this a successful move.
So I would say that there are a lot of like implications of coming from an immigrant parents where you know they have this dream for you that, and for me a lot of the times it was like you're going to be a doctor, an
Mhm.
engineer or a lawyer, and those are your only options, and
Yeah.
you go like those are your options, and then they came here and they gave up to everything in their home country, to get to where they are, and like, and even though like again not affluent by any means, but like in a place where we are very happy. And I think that the belief that I had to get over or overcome was, I understand the sacrifice, I appreciate the sacrifice, but I also didn't ask for that dream. And it's okay
Mhm.
for me to also build my own, understand that like I appreciate the sacrifice, but no amount of sacrifice I feel will be enough to equate to everything that they've done. But recognizing that I can detach, like I give myself the permission to detach from the dreams that they had for me
Mm.
because I didn't ask for that. And it is also completely allowed for me to have my own identity outside of what is believed to be for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. 100%, 100%. I don't know if I'm completely detached from my parents' expectation yet. So
No,
good
no,
for
no.
you.
That will
But,
never happen for me. But, like, but, but I think that understanding that it's
mhm,
like giving myself the permission to
yeah,
be okay with like, okay, so I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an engineer. Those are not the things that are for me, and that's okay. And kind of giving myself the space to also find my own path in addition to recognizing the like they don't have to be two separate things, but they do. You do have to allow yourself to to kind of let go of the dream
yeah,
that they might have had for you.
yeah,
Me, I
yeah,
should say.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, we all share. I mean, I can't say we all share, but there are definitely parents' expectation that or the belief that we grew up with that are affecting our daily lives and a lot of the therapy session to these days that are happening all the issues are going could be traced back to what happened to our childhood what we how we're raised and could be one mindless incident that's affecting us right now so 100% now you're doing rental rescue is huge capital fundraising and what made you realize that fundraising alone is not enough that you needed a different model.
So I realized that a lot of organizations, especially organizations that have been around for hundreds of years or 100 years,
Yes.
a lot of them depend on government funding or other types of funding that that are kind of stabilizing the organization. But that money, especially in today's budget and especially with today's costs,
Mm,
doesn't necessarily exist anymore. At least not in the same operational way that it has before historically. And so I kind of like I almost we almost flipped it on its head, because I'm going to say we because it's not just me
mhm,
who's behind all the work, and um, recognizing that we need a self-sustaining method that where cash flows can sustain what we're doing, and it's a cyclical nature of capital flow, rather than this kind of like here's money, here's the dream, here's what we want to raise, and then here's where we should here's where we're going to go to try and ask for it. It's the opposite. So what is the minimum and maximum amount of money that we need? Okay. And then what are the parameters for which we need to create in order to get to be successful,
mm,
and kind of going about it and reverse engineering it from that way. And I found that that was really it's much more financially sustainable, but it's also a method that will help the nonprofit sector overall and social enterprises overall to become much more self sustaining,
sustainable. Yeah.
self sufficient. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So you talk about the self-sustaining idea, which I'm like all for. I feel like maybe because I grew up in an immigrant family, I feel like I have to be uh, I
sufficient.
feel like it has to be self-sufficient all the time, and maybe as the expectation and whatnot. Like having that and then I totally agree with what you've seen and what we've discussed earlier before our podcast started was the struggle that the executive directors are facing these days. And what do you see from your point of view that not these exec, the industry alone, what do the leaders often misunderstand about growing revenue?
What do leaders misunderstand about ongoing revenue? I would say that um, okay, so I can speak to specifically housing. There are there are a few organizations and family foundations that will give money, and that's
Mm,
one way of granting cycles.
yeah.
But at the same time, like family, let's say we can talk about family foundations and community foundations.
Yeah.
They, even though they have this bucket, the 100% bucket,
Yeah.
generally they'll only distribute around 5% of their revenues, 95% being cycled back into the foundation.
Mm,
And that's great, but that also means that the sector overall is competing for grant money around the 5% capital that's being distributed.
mm, yeah.
And I can only speak to housing in this way, but
Yeah.
in housing, it's going to be billions of dollars that we have to commit to. And someone said this at a conference that I was at recently. They said we're trying to solve global problems with municipal budgets. You could argue the same
Mm,
thing about nonprofits. Nonprofits are trying to solve societal problems with a shoestring budget.
mm. So what you mentioned that you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at how much you can spend, and then from that lens and you go back to how you generate revenue. Now, how much revenue you would need to generate. Then my question back to that as well as your previous comment is that given the constraint of that pie is so small, what else can the industry, the nonprofit industry itself be able to generate a revenue? What else can they do about revenue growing? Like we know that it's a shrinking pie every single year because government has to cut spending. It's a cycle. They increase the spending and then they cut the spending and then they increase the spending. Right now we're in the contraction stage at least. So what can executive directors do? What should leaders do?
What should leaders do when capital is shrinking? I think that it's a matter of being comfortable with going outside of what is traditionally known. And when it comes to like granting and philanthropy, absolutely agree that that's important, but we cannot strictly depend on granting and philanthropy to be be one of the only methods of capital raising. That just it doesn't that was a historical way of going about things that isn't sustainable anymore. Because the capital isn't being distributed in the same ways. So really going outside of your comfort zone and understanding what might be possible is one thing, and then I think the second is working as a collective. I think that that's become much that comes more and more becomes more and more important as kind of things progress, where understanding where the niche is, where your niche is, and then trying to ensure that you're really staying focused on delivering that thing very, very, very well. And and then kind of creating, instead of creating like where we have to be this whole system that each of us are doing everything all at once and we're trying to be everything to everyone, creating these interdependent links and nodes within a collective ecosystem where we can depend on one another and doing the things that each of us does well, and that we know how to do and that we feel confident in delivering on. um, because I think that I believe in collectivism in this way, and I believe in being able to create an ecosystem that is cohesive and interdependent, and really trying to like depend to create a space, an environment that enables for that even further, especially as money is becoming harder to come by in that way. But then on the flip side, I also don't believe that necessarily there isn't enough capital. I believe there is enough capital that's out there. It's just a matter of access and understanding how we can create these systems that can deploy and mobilize money and wealth.
So, on the note of collective leveraging each other and specializing in different things, do you have a particular example or personal experience that you can share?
A personal experience of something that I can share is, well, I can go back to either the First Ontario example where they
Mhm.
are an accredited credit union. Obviously, they know, like they are the finance guys and the
Yeah,
investment guys,
yeah.
um, and so knowing that that is the space that they work within, a lot of our communications are very much finance oriented, and language around that is very important to stay within the language that is understood. um,
Mhm.
and then I would say that for rental rescues perspective, how we're going about like communicating with tenants isn't all that financially technical, but it still is very explicit around like, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do. Being very transparent and communicative with the tenants is important, and building a community around the work is very important. So recognizing um, that we have the different ways that we need to communicate, but how we communicate is and how we deliver something is just as important as the
Mm.
communication itself. That's I'm not sure if that answered your question. Sorry.
So you also mentioned you mentioned maybe you didn't use creative solution, but you did mention that going out there, being aware of what you else you can do to generate revenue earlier. And is there a particular example that you can share that is not the norm? I think working with the credit union is one of the examples that I could think of. Is there any other thing that you are generating revenue for rental rescue that other people can potentially learn from? Or if you have any other creative ideas out there that you're experimenting that you don't mind sharing?
So I would say that some of the creative ways that we've been able um, to support, and that
Mm.
are that's a little bit different from what we're seeing in traditional nonprofit programming and structuring, is that we're also building out digital infrastructure that
Mm,
supports the nonprofit sector. When I describe to you as like we're like the foster parent, we're the rescue that is purchasing buildings and then rehabilitating and then transferring, responsible transfer of ownership and asset to within the nonprofit sector is the whole thing. So we're not just doing the capital raising and investment and construction management and all of the like technical pieces in the construction, and rehabilitation of the building to raise the standard of living in the buildings. We're also
mhm.
supporting the digital pieces that are required for ongoing maintenance and operations of the buildings, so that
Oh,
yeah, so that it's not, so this is one I guess it's not a necessarily a
mm,
creative financial strategy, but it is a part of saving money and headache for the nonprofit and social space to to ensure that we're not transferring the buck. We're not passing the buck or transferring the headache over to another organization that might not have the same capacity, to operate in the same ways that we do. So building out the systems and infrastructure, digital infrastructure, so that we can further support the ongoing operational side of things, and create more capacity within the space, so that organizations can continue to focus on the mission and mandate that they need to focus on.
you're
Yeah.
really a one-stop shop. You're not just upgrading the property for affordable housing, but you're also upgrading the whole operating system so that they would have like a turnkey solution for everything.
Well, and that was what the intention and the kind of gap that was recognized during COVID, but then like even throughout the time, like it's not that the nonprofit sector doesn't have the capacity or the knowledge or the drive to do it. It's that from my understanding, in many cases, affordable housing is one of the vehicles that is baseline required for any other organization to support a vulnerable population. And
Mm,
if they don't have access to affordable housing, then they can't support the vulnerable population, marginalized populations that need the additional support to do what they're doing, whether it be employment, whether that be education, whatever, what have you. Like if they don't if the beneficiaries and clients of the nonprofit do not have access to housing, then everything else falls apart. But how do you expect an organization that is so focused on operating on supporting the marginalized people to then also figure out capital stacking and capital raising and how to purchase a building without overpaying, and the bidding strategies and the down payment and all of these other things, as well as the digital infrastructure afterwards? Like, that's crazy. This is like that's,
I agree. I agree.
that's not fair.
So, linking it back to my personal experience, like I grew up in Hong Kong, and my family was also immigrant in Hong Kong back then, and we were the recipient of like subsidized, government subsidized housing, and it's very, very heavily subsidized. Let's just put it that way. I remember my parents were paying a couple hundred Canadian dollars rent, equivalent to a couple $100 a month, and that allows them to save enough money to qualify for the government subsidized purchase housing. And then so then we move on to there and then free up the space for whoever that needs that space. And then we then move on again to like private property. And I totally wholeheartedly agree with you that it's in back in Asia, in Singapore and Hong Kong, and I think also maybe in Japan as well. Like there's a lot of like the government interference, government help is all there, and it's unfortunate in Canada that uh, the help is not as dominant over compared to those specific places, and that it falls into onto the nonprofit sector to take care of um, the less fortunate population.
I would agree, and at the same time, like, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your personal story as well. I know that like, so you understand, like, from a lived experience standpoint, you
Yeah.
understand the value of the systems that enable further ability for housing and maintaining housing. And from it, I agree that it's hard, that the government doesn't have the same capacity and portfolio, but at the same time, I think that, like, we're very lucky that now at least or all governments are aligning, and politicians are understanding the value, and policymakers are using their influence to then move things forward and expedite. And similarly, capital, people who are wealth holders and capital, and foundations and endowment funds, people are really rallying around this collective need, societal
Yep.
need of housing. And I think that it's really cool that we get to be a small sliver in those solutions too.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. This has been amazing and very eye-opening experience. Like talking to you, being able to work with non-traditional partner in the space and create being I think being a creative solution out there for a lot of other nonprofit organizations that do not have the capacity to do what you do. So thank you for doing what you do. It's amazing, and thank you for coming on to the show and share a little bit of your like a lot of your wisdom that we can all learn from.
Thank you so much, Cherry, and I'm glad to be here. And anytime, just message me.
Thank you, Crystal. I mean, in between your rescue project and also digital implementation, I will try to sneak myself into half an hour slot into your busy schedule and do a follow up in a couple of years. Okay.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Really
Thanks,
happy to have you here.
thanks, Cherry.
As we wrap up, I want to share a bit more about what we do at Altus Financial Solutions. For the past 18 years, Altus Financial Solutions has been dedicated to enhancing the financial management and strategic planning capabilities of hundreds of associations and nonprofits across Canada. Our extensive experience has enabled us to deliver tailored financial solutions that drive growth and enhance sustainability for nonprofits and associations. If you are interested in learning more about how Altus Financial Solutions can support your organization, I would love to offer you a no obligation 20-minute call. Let's discuss your unique challenges and explore how we would be able to help you achieve your goals.